Hey, folks. Okay, so you are watching the Church Safety Guys. My name's James, and I will be with you this evening. Um, Presently, I know typically when we do the Facebook Live for the Church Safety and Security page, Paul Buckner usually joins me. I'm not sure if he's going to be joining me this evening because he actually was out of town and on the road on the way back, but I do have kind of hanging with me tonight. I do have Jack Rolfe, and I'm really excited about the chance to get to talk to him in a few minutes here. But just kind of handling some, I don't know, preliminary things. I want to shout out real quick to StreamYard. If you haven't checked out their software for broadcasting, StreamYard.com is their site. Awesome folks. They just started. It can broadcast on multiple platforms, and I reached out to them, kind of told them what we were doing here with the Church Safety Guys and the Facebook group, and they actually came back and offered to sponsor our Facebook Live for the next 2 months to try it out. So I really appreciate them doing that. It's a great opportunity for us for what we're doing to keep a minimal cost because as we look for more sponsors to sponsor different things, it helps obviously pay the bills for some of this stuff. So wanted to give a shout out to them. So if you get a chance and you're looking for that type of software, definitely check them out. Also, I just wanted to thank everybody for kind of hanging with us. Wednesday night, we did a Facebook Live. Paul and I did, and it ended up going 2 hours, which was not our intent originally. But just the discussion of white settlement, and I appreciate all of your feedback from that. You guys are awesome and fantastic. But we got a lot of really positive feedback from that. And just to kind of let you know, Paul and I don't take your participation lightly. Like when we talk about it offline, a lot of times we go back and forth and we look at the engagement of the group. We look at, from a statistics perspective, we look at how fast the group's growing, the content, all that stuff. So we appreciate the fact that you hang out with us and you listen to us, and we definitely value your input and your relationship because we're here to minister and to try and be helpful, and so we can't do that without you guys and without your input as well. So one quick thing about going live on the StreamYard, and I say this every week, if you're joining us, if you could do me a favor and actually just type in your church location, where you're from, and when you click the live stream, if you give StreamYard the permission, what happens is they send for the time that we're live streaming, they send that link to me. I'm kind of in a broadcasting studio on my computer right now. And so what happens is I can see, without logging into Facebook, I can see your name pop up or who you are and that sort of thing when you give them permission. Otherwise, for me, it just pops up Facebook user, and I can't really see too much of where you're from other than you typing. So if you give the permission and have the opportunity to do that, that helps out a lot. And then I don't have to pull up Facebook and actually look at the live stream while I'm talking to you guys. So we've got a couple people on here. Cool. Welcome, Dave. Appreciate you hanging with us. There was actually a gentleman, I was just getting ready to type your name into the Facebook page. A gentleman was just asking a question about radios, and and you popped up in my mind, and I was like, I need to tag Dave in this so he can respond. And then Jim Reynolds, yeah, you're in fine because your name popped up and you're you're good. I appreciate you hanging with us too. So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open in a word of prayer because that's something that Paul and I have decided to do. So we'll go ahead and do that, and then I will bring Jack in, and we'll chat with him. So let's pray real quick. Heavenly Father, I thank you for again for the opportunity that we have to come before you, and I just ask that you bless this time and bless those that hear this message, that it would be edifying, and that it would be just uplifting to them and help them in keeping your people safe. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. So cool. Thank you guys for posting that. I'm going to go ahead and pull that. All right. I'll bring Jack in here with me. So thank you, Mr. Rolfe, for joining us. I appreciate your time. Just to kind of set the stage, I know you've been in church safety forever. And I know that some of this stuff probably seems kind of redundant to you, but I appreciate you joining us. You've got a book out. Just walk us through. Tell us a little bit about your experience and where you're at today and how you got there. Let's say that.
It's been interesting. I started off in the early 90s, and I was asked to do security, which encompassed walking around the building, keeping kids from running around.
Sure.
And I was involved into a full team, which is 100+ members. We're dealing with domestic issues, interrupters, domestic terrorists, all sorts of stuff. I go to Calvary Church in Naperville. We run about 7,000 people every Sunday, with over 1,000 children there. And we are fortunate to have a team of over 100 people there. So it's a very vibrant ministry, full support from the pastoral staff and the deacons and the congregation as well.
That's awesome. I can't stress, and I've said this before, but it's so awesome to have a church where the leadership supports what's going on. A lot of times, and I've spoken with individuals in the group that have said they were really discouraged, and I know I've been discouraged before when the church that I've been serving at, I've been at for I think probably almost 13 years, and there was a point in time when church safety was kind of like, what's that, or like you said, following the kids around and just making sure they didn't get into trouble. But so one of the things I was kind of curious about and was kind of interested in your opinion. Running 100-person team is a lot different than running the smaller church size of maybe 5 to 10 to mid-size of 20 to 30.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you guys see for running a larger team like that?
Well, I'd like to say first that everything is scalable. So
Sure.
What we do at a big church is 100% applicable at a small church. I've worked with big teams, little teams, and currently I'm out working with a lot of churches in a lot of areas, rural areas, urban areas, suburban areas. And it's, what you do and the things that you run into are essentially the same. So it just scaled up a little bit. But we have 2 events on an annual basis called Calvary Serve, and this is almost like a trade show. We have booths out in the lobby where we are recruiting volunteers and people who are interested in serving in ministry in everything. It could be choir, children's ministries, ushers, security, and that's been our main recruiting effort.
Sure. So how do you go through the screening process of that? Because it would seem like if you have that large of a church that you would get a lot of people with the idea that, oh, security is great. I want to be secured. I want to be security. I want to carry a gun. How do you screen through that?
That's an excellent question. And of course, we have background checks on everybody. And then there is a vetting process that involves the deacons and church staff. And then, the first few weeks we're having them shadow different individuals so they kind of get a taste for what they're getting into. And I think it's important that you outline expectations up front. A lot of people
Sure.
kind of see this glamorous thing of security, and it's really quite boring. But it isn't security so much; it's ministry, and we have
Right.
unbelievable things that are happening in the ministry arena. So that's very rewarding. And as a
Sure.
result of having the team, we can show that we have a safer place to worship. We have physically seen people divert to other places when they came in and saw what we were doing, and the Lord really has covered us.
Cool. One of the things that you just touched on is something that Paul and I talk about a lot, and it's kind of drawing a fine line between being a ministry and being a job. And a lot of times, I know I've been involved with ministry in the church for as a pastor in different capacities over the years, and then also municipal services locally with with the fire department, EMS, law enforcement, etc. But one of the things that I've seen as being in the church as long as I have is that a lot of times things that start out as a ministry can get kind of boring, and then we shift it to, okay, well, this is a job, this is something I have to do. And I was kind of looking through some of the articles that you've written, and what stood out to me was that you emphasized church safety as a ministry, and that you really kind of I felt like you hit the nail on the head, because as a ministry, you kind of have a different perspective in how you serve versus, and what you're trying to accomplish. Um, talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you see that as fitting in as like a ministry type thing?
Well, we're ambassadors for the church. And many times we're the first contact with an individual. Maybe they're late. People come in 20, 30, 40 minutes late for a service. And we have a large building. It's over 350,000 square feet. And they're sort of lost and looking around. And we get to be the ones that approach, hey, how are you? Can I help you find a place or whatever? And, it's really, that's ministry. We're greeters, we're ushers, we're kind of everything. So a lot of times we're the face of the church. And we start the morning off with prayer with all guest services. And we have a lot of individual prayer. I think we treat our team a lot like a small group or community group, as some churches might consider them. And we pray for one another. We come in with the same needs as anybody else, with needs for work and relationship issues and financial issues and health issues. And
Sure.
So ministry really is the key focus of everything that we do. And we're looking at people that we may encounter. They're lost and hurting, and we get the opportunity to share in that ministry. Sometimes it takes a different turn, but we always want to be Christ-like in the way that we pursue people and interact with them.
Sure. That sounds, it's kind of interesting. You said earlier everything was scalable. That sounds very much like what we do on a regular basis. We don't have quite the volume. We're actually, our church right now is really about 1,000 to 1,200. So even for us, I mean, when you consider statistics, we're kind of in a weird spot, because we're not really a mega church, but we're not really, a small church either.
Right.
But I guess over the years, one of my focus has been, as you mentioned, just ministering to people. And we're kind of in the process at the moment of transitioning into having like a life group or Bible study as a safety team, just to try and minister to each other, and realizing that the safety of all the ministries that I see at a church, I think the most time consuming one, even more so sometimes than being a pastor, with my experience, is security and safety. And so when we go out to people, I know from my experience, when I go out and I say, okay, I need you to show up on this particular day for this time. We just had this pop up, and it's a fire here, it's a fire there, that sort of thing. What kind of seemed important to me was making sure that we invest back into, the individuals that are serving, that we're not always just saying, hey, can you give me this? Can you do this for me? Versus understanding and realizing what you said, which was that, they're individuals just like you and I. They come in with just as much heavy on their heart and their mind when they're serving, and we're kind of asking them to put on a cap of high awareness or be as alert as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Put the phone away, don't text, don't fellowship with other people, stare straight ahead. you know
We
so
encourage the opposite, which is do fellowship with people. And
right.
we're going around the building, and it's very, very interactive. Another aspect of the ministry part is we're in very close proximity with pastors and have access to them that others don't. And they're carrying troubles and needs and things, and a lot of times we pray with them and for them. And that's much appreciated also. But there's just such great opportunity for ministry. We've also had persons of interest show up, and we're praying, for some revelation, for discernment. And I had a case recently where one of our persons of interest walked up to me and said, "Gee, security is really heavy today." So, well, not any more than usual. Mm-hmm. I did not recognize person initially. Mm-hmm. It was a woman, and she had completely changed her hair and her appearance and everything else. And as she's walking away, I'm going, "That's, so-and-so." And so we were able to deal with that. And, that's just all the Holy Spirit working with us. And again, you just really have to approach the whole thing as ministry.
Sure. Yeah, it was kind of funny. Actually, today I went to church with the expectation that being the first Sunday after the shooting down in Texas this past week, that much of my role as a director is more, public relations. Like, people like to see me wandering around and making sure that, I'm kind of looking at stuff, and it's so a lot of times, like, and we had a team and a group of individuals that were on the schedule. So I was kind of like the extra person today, but I regularly, like, I'll walk through the sanctuary and say hello to people and shake hands and do that sometimes just as much as the pastors do, and make eye contact with people and kind of go out to them. But I thought it was interesting today. Several people stopped me and actually said, "So are we on high alert?" And it was kind of like this whole this whole joke. And I'm like, "For what? What do you what do you mean?" And this one gentleman was like, "Well, I just figured with everything going on down south that you'd have 30 people guarding the doors and everything." And I said, "We're prepared like any other Sunday. We train, we do our best with folks on the schedule, and realizing that it is a ministry. Sometimes it's hard to motivate people, keep morale high. Training, asking people to show up for training sometimes is an interesting task, especially for smaller churches. But no, I think it's interesting that you get people or members that are interested in it just for a short period of time. They're like, "Hey, I'm glad we have something." And then, next week, unfortunately, I think we'll be back to, I'll have people probably complaining to me about, "Well, why did you let somebody scratch my car out in the parking lot?" or something like that.
Well, one thing is that, the need is continuous. The fact that there may be very little action maybe as a result of our actions and our presence.
Sure.
And that's a message that we constantly reinforce. Mm-hmm. And the need is very clear. Anytime you turn on the newspaper, the TV, the internet news feeds, this is only going to get worse. And that's biblical.
Sure.
We see all sorts of events happening all over the world, and we just have to be prepared for it. So it's we're very thankful for our volunteers and always express that. We do try and give them good training, good equipment, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's the need is ever present. But we do focus on ministry, and I think we get a higher level of commitment because of that. And there's been plenty of times when I've been bored or even upset with church leadership. But you have to stop and remember who you're serving. you're serving all those people in the pews, your neighbors, your friends, your family. And I think that helps keep it in perspective and works out pretty well. Out of our whole huge team of 100 plus people, they're not all active. Some just come in for special events. Some come say, you don't really need me. You've got 14 guys in the sanctuary right now. So, and we always say, hey, just be eyes and ears, sit with your family, do what you want. So it's a challenge to keep people up and motivated. And we do lose some people, but we tend to gain a lot more than we're losing. So.
Sure. And it's kind of interesting that you say that, because it seems like when I look at the folks that serve with me, I think it's kind of interesting, but we actually have a much higher retention level for ministries at our church because of just how we do things and how we run things. But I think it's just kind of interesting as far as, I've had the experience leading other ministries before where, if you have someone devoted for 5 or 6 months, you're doing good. And, I sit down and I look at the folks that are passionate and serve with me. And, I have folks that have been doing the same thing, every Sunday for the last 5, 6, 7 years, that are like, yeah, I'm here. What do you need?
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. So how do you what, as far as your group goes, what do you guys do that keeps morale high and just boosts people's spirit with that?
I can sum that up in one word: pizza.
Now,
that literally is the best draw for our meeting. Free pizza, but
you can't say that because you guys aren't a Baptist church, and only Baptist denominations like food. So,
well, everything else is bad for you and everything else. So what's left? But we have a lot of fun. There's great camaraderie. We have so many events and things, and that there's a place for everybody too. Not everybody's close, protection. So you pretty much serve where you want, where you're comfortable. Talking about recruiting here, and sometimes we get people who may not necessarily be best suited for this.
Sure.
But as a ministry, we want to be open to everybody. So you can certainly sit and watch a TV set for an hour and be in our monitor room. You could be in our overwatch position. You can be, there's a whole variety of tasks that would be more comfortable for certain groups of people than others.
Sure.
And gravitate more towards the EP side of things. But it was only one time in the 20-some years that I've ever actually purposely tried to reject somebody. And this person just was way out of their element. And I had an argument with staff about that. And they said, no, we got to, find a place somewhere else. A week later, this individual called me up and said they'd shot themselves in the hand when they were at the range.
Okay.
And retired. So I said, yeah, okay, you were right about that one. So that was some real discernment there, but because we don't want our team getting hurt either, so
Sure.
It was interesting. You'd asked in some of the notes that we had exchanged prior to this about how do you deal with internal conflict and when new members come in and so forth. And I think there's a couple of things. One is that if you have a good structure set up, people see it, understand it. We really don't have a big hierarchy of leadership and all that. In fact, we have a multiplicity of leaders. It could be any one of 6 or 8 people that will be the quote unquote officer of the day. But I always keep in mind my business training. I was over 40 years in corporate management, and I always remembered the 4 stages of team building. It's forming, storming, norming, and performing. And I don't care what circumstance you're in, it works every single time. So forming, the team initially comes together. Storming, you're banging around trying to figure out how to work to each other, how to communicate, those things. Then it starts to level out, and then you start to perform. And it holds true every single time. The storming part with this team is very minimal because we have very well vetted tactics and the way we run things, and it's pretty smooth. So we get law enforcement guys in. They have no issue. I mean, it really is a well-run team. Plus, we're very open to new ideas. I don't know everything there is to know about security. Nobody on this broadcast knows everything.
Sure.
So people come in with new ideas, new thoughts, new ways to approach things. Very, very helpful.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I've written, like, typically hands-on. I usually write the schedule for my teams, and I've done that for the last, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And it's funny because I've always had different issues, like in-house, with how our schedule, like who's scheduled where, what time, all that stuff. And I had a gentleman come up to me, back in just a regular volunteer come up to me back in December or end of November. And he said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Sure, what's up? What can I do for you?" And he's like, "Well, I want to sit down and talk to you because I've been looking at how our teams are formed and how you're scheduling, how the scheduling runs. And I had some ideas about it." And I sat down with him and his wife, and I'm like, "Okay, you've got me, you've got my time. Tell me what's going on." And he pulls out this sheet, that's a print off from an Excel spreadsheet, right? And every person's name is on it, every team, every position, everything. And I mean, this would be a spreadsheet that would probably take somebody a couple hours to put together. And he sat it down on the table and he slid it across to me, and I'm looking at it, and every single time that I came up, like, in my mind, I'm like, well, this wasn't going to work because of this or because of that. I couldn't say that because I started to say it and I'm like, wait a second, this might actually be crazy enough to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so we actually sat down as a team, we looked it over, I put it in the computer, and it was amazing. I'm like, here I've been struggling with this for so long, and this gentleman comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, try this," and bam, it worked. And it was great. So I definitely know. I mean, we operate very similarly, in that, if someone comes up to us and says, "Hey, here's a suggestion, here's an idea," we do try and listen to it and kind of take it to heart. So good stuff. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I definitely, like I said, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Tell us about a time that, I don't know, in 20 years you must have quite a few stories. But tell us the story that sticks out in your mind of something that you had to deal with over the years.
Well, I guess probably the most bizarre was a POI that we call Lady Godiva. And she had a history of going into churches in the area, and she'd get comfortable and then she'd start disrobing.
All righty.
So, we got to her before it got too interesting. And then as a precautionary measure, we placed a blanket up near the front where she typically sat so that we could have something to cover her in case, things went way off key. But that was pretty bizarre. And we have had a lot of guests, a lot of concerts. Again, we're blessed to be a big church. So I was just talking to a fellow today. The highest level person we ever provided security for was the chief of naval operations on the Joint Chiefs.
Oh, wow.
For Veterans Day. So that was awesome to do that. And,
sure.
And also one of the recent concerts, I was in backstage doing security back there. And this kid comes in from a parking lot wearing a flannel shirt and blue jeans. I wouldn't let him go back there. And he said, but I'm the opening act. Hey, listen, I'm an old guy, I don't know these guys. So, but we all laughed about it. It was fine, so.
That's
one thing I would like to mention on your recruiting is recruiting
Yeah.
doesn't have to be just security people. We utilize layers of security, and we use our greeters and our ushers and the people at the welcome desk, the parking lot people. Every single one of them are eyes and ears for our team. So we try to include them on our training, how to recognize suspicious behaviors and different things that we might be looking for. And so you don't have to act, but just be aware of these things. And if you see something, say something. So I'd encourage everybody out there to make sure they utilize everybody on the team because it's everybody's job.
Sure. Now, do you guys, just out of curiosity, do you guys have a separate medical team, or do you operate
Yes.
together? At,
Yeah, we have a MERT, medical emergency response team, and that's
okay.
doctors, nurses, paramedics, and again, they kind of rotate people through and have a similar posture to what we do. We actually
Okay.
share some, like their dispatch person is
Mhm.
also our monitor person. So we have all of our security monitors in that same room, and that really helps a lot.
Do you, as far as leadership goes, do they have their own structure, or do they answer to you, or how does that work usually?
We have a staff person who all of the various components of guest services report to.
Okay.
So Bob's in charge of, I think, 8 different ministries. So he's in charge of parking ministry, ushers ministry, greeters ministry, security, MERT, and a couple others that I can't recall. But and he's actually a paid staff person. That used to be a pastoral position, but there
Sure.
were so many other things going on. We really didn't get a lot of focus and attention. So that was a major improvement for our group.
That's good. I think originally when we started off, we actually had two separate teams, and similar to that. And over the years, we've kind of merged it, just because of the size of our church and training, and
Mhm.
it just kind of ended up. I would love to have a doctor that actually attends our church. I haven't found one yet, but like I said, we've kind of merged things to just be able to have one team to respond to everything, and for us, that's just kind of worked as less chaotic, with the
Again,
flow.
we work very closely with all the ministries, and many times when Usher said, "Hey, that person over there is looking a little different," again, it's just see something, say something. And
Sure.
95% of the time, it's nothing. We go, "Oh yeah, we know that guy and that girl or whatever." So we all work very, very closely together, and greeters know who we are. We know, everybody's all dialed into the same thing. So, and again, approaching people coming into the church as a ministry and open and welcoming, and it just really works really well. So using layers is really important, especially for smaller churches.
Sure. Okay. Well, I don't think I have any other questions for you.
All right.
I appreciate
I
your
didn't
time.
put my book much at the front. I'll just say jackrolfe.com.
Yeah.
I have my book, Watch My Sheep, which is establishing and running a church security ministry, and it's A to Z. First step is establishing buy-in from the pastors and the staff, and then going from there. So,
Okay.
but I appreciate working with you, and I love the stuff that's going on Facebook, and have been happy to contribute a little here and there. And
Well, I definitely appreciate your time, and we'll definitely, when Paul comes back, if he ever makes it back, we'll reach out to you, and maybe you can join us again sometime. That would
well,
be
I'd love
great.
to. That's great.
All right, cool. Thank you, sir. All right, folks. So I'm just back with you, and again, I appreciate Jack and his time. I'm going to go ahead and kind of go through the comments a little bit, and then I'll wrap it up. I still have his Jack's contact information on the screen, so it's jackrolfe.com. And then if you have an opportunity to check out his website, or his book looks really interesting, um, that would definitely be a good opportunity for you, especially for the folks that are just starting. Um, it seems like I haven't read the book. I'm going to try and get a copy of it actually and read it, but it seems like it would definitely be helpful for folks that are going through that. So I'm going to check Facebook here real quick and just go through the comments. Dave Johnson, we have homemade brownies at our meetings. That's pretty good. When we talk about food and I guess motivating people, um, we always try and get something like that. A lot of times when we do a meeting, um, it's right around 5 or 6 o'clock. So often we'll try and bring in like pizza or food or something like that, where um, we have the opportunity to fellowship and actually have a little bit of have dinner or that sort of thing. And but anyhow, hopefully that was helpful for you. One of the things that uh, Jack mentioned to me, and I know that it's kind of been near and dear for Paul and I, is just that the ministry aspect of it. And I know it's so hard sometimes to actually go from or to maintain, like to have a high morale, a good attitude, and maintain as a ministry, because a lot of times it ends up, it can get frustrating, especially if the leadership isn't on board. And that's one of the things that, that Paul and I say a lot, which Jack said, which was, you have to remember who you're doing it for. And I know that's easier. Sometimes that's easier said than done. But at the same time, all of our services is for God's glory. We serve in the church, we minister where our gifts fit. And the other thing that I really like that Jack mentioned was that they find a place for people, and there's different levels of how people can be involved. And that's another thing, honestly. A lot of times I talk to church safety and security teams all over the US, but a lot of times that's a big question that they have is, well, don't you guys have to be SWAT or tactical trained or something like that? And the reality of it is, if you, and I've said this before on other videos, but I always use the acronym FAT, faithful, available, and teachable, or trainable. And that sounds kind of silly, but that's how I remember it. If someone's regularly going to the church or regularly involved, they're available, and they're trainable, you can go a long ways with somebody, in some, at least in my experience, in some cases further with somebody that's training or trainable and teachable, and has a spirit of openness to someone that comes in that has gone through years and years of military or law enforcement training, that might be the perfect person on paper, but at the same time doesn't have a spirit of flexibility or willingness to understand, like, the ministry and how different churches function, or how churches function differently. This group actually represents a lot of different denominations and different places of worship. And so, again, I'll close it up tonight, and it's a little bit early, but I would just encourage you, if you have the opportunity to actually go out and talk to some of the churches, or network with some of the churches, especially in the more rural areas, that gives you an opportunity to kind of see how they do things, or how they might do something different, or maybe, if you have a flexible attitude with that, you can learn from them and bring back something that would be beneficial to your team from an operational standpoint, or what to look for, or training, or that sort of thing. So definitely a lot of thought there. And one of the last things I have on my list here of things to cover, again, I'll just throw out our website real quick, and it's at the bottom of the page right now. But if you guys have the opportunity to go on there, we have different options for sponsoring a church. Like, if you feel like your church would like to help other churches, there's opportunity there for donations to sponsor a trainer to go to a church. We also have a page on the main page of that website. We have a list of churches that's growing daily, and that's awesome, because those churches actually are churches in those metropolitan areas, or in those areas that are willing to serve other churches, or send people to help if they need help. So that's an awesome resource. If you're interested in helping others locally in your area, and you don't see your name on that list, or your city on that list, please shoot me a message or shoot me an email, and I would be happy to add your church. And similarly, in the Midwest area, if you're watching this and you're like, you know what, we really need first aid training, but I can't, we can't get it, that maybe the church is small, it can't afford it, that sort of thing. Please reach out to me. I do have a church right now that's willing to sponsor other churches' training, and they're willing to help with the cost on that. And so there's definitely options there, and there's opportunity to get you guys helped out and to network and help out. Michael Holland has actually kind of joined our team, or joined the team of Paul Buckner and I. But Michael has been doing an awesome job actually adding people to the group and kind of helping us sort through some of the content and making sure that it's staying edifying and that sort of thing. But Michael got into a situation, he's out of Memphis, Tennessee. He got into a situation with Christmas where he needed extra people. And he commented to me about it. I posted in the group, and literally within an hour, there were 3 other churches in the Memphis area that contacted me and said, hey, we've got folks, we would love to go over there and give him a hand. And, it just kind of really, it really blessed me that I was in the middle of that. But I thought, how awesome would it be if we had actually a network where we could do this, where when things did come up, or events or VBS or stuff like that, as churches grow, if they don't have the response or the volunteers, that other churches can jump in and serve and help them. So you definitely take a look at that. You definitely want to see if that's something that you guys are interested in, or if your church wants to participate. And please remember what I said about the training. The resources are there if you guys need help with something. Paul's based out of Missouri. I'm out of Ohio. But together we can kind of cover a lot of ground, and we've already reached out to several churches that needed help, because of that they've reached out to us through the group, and we've been able to say, hey, let's sit down, let's chat with you guys, let's see how we can help you guys grow and get you solid and do better with this ministry, and bless your church and that sort of thing. So the invitation's out there. All you have to do is reach out. And other than that, I'm going to call it an early evening. I know it's not our typical hour, but I appreciate you guys hanging with us. And I hope you guys have a great, quiet week. And God bless and take care.